당연히 하지만 가르쳐야 되는 데리로 되게 생각도 최담제 라신이 주다 말로 제바치에 하는 것이 놓고 땡진 제와 중화 삼김전 삼다 제바치에도 최담제 라신이 뭐도 동방이 또 한국에서 동방이 또 해도 안에 산지에 녀모바 지바 바차다 제바 빵비 빵바디 안에 빵바 산지에 최고군조 세야 네 지게 최고군조다 산지군조 기둥군조 되게야 안에 점조되게 안에 이치배가서 그래 신의 대바토바 질리기레스 되네자다 잡들어야 안에 타바되가는 게 잡들어 신의 대바토바래야다 되네자 안에 점로 교화며 받기도 그래서 뒤엔자 동이도 발라 되네 안 잠인지 되게 공부이네 안에 라버도 패야다 자주심되게 안직 뭐 공부해도 좋아돼 용도 그래야지 먼저 그 생각이 그러시고요.
Good evening. Last weekend when we were together, amongst other topics, we looked at the topic of refuge. And refuge in particular, when it's been generated independence on seeing the reality, independence on knowledge that one has gained, will be a refuge of great power. So when one investigates whether phenomena exist by way of their own nature or essence or not, one engages in an analytical meditation based on reasons. And through this process of reasoning, one comes to recognize that all phenomena, without exception, are empty of existing by way of their own nature or essence. When one recognizes this, one realizes that the afflictions, together with their seeds, all the sources of our suffering, can be eradicated, and Buddhahood can be attained. And thereby, powerful faith rising from this knowledge in the Buddha jewel, the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel arises. And with this comes the certain knowledge that enlightenment is possible for oneself. And this then powers one's spiritual development, makes one's aspiration to generate definite emergence, bodhicitta, the wisdom directly realizing emptiness, and so forth, transformatively powerful.
얘네 신의 대바 도바시리게 됐지. 교화매베 대바 리도 그래. 제자다 때는 안에 산지 손시베 손디게 하는 아니 채마이 손채마이 마도 그래. 대라티는 안에 아주 공부를 불러서 받아. 아니 지기 되네게 안 소소게 되네게 직번르다. 되네가 소소리아 최대하게 위신이 봐도 안 지기야 될 신의 대바 도바시리게 해서 지가서 다들 두스코시르.
Moreover, last time, also in the context of refuge, through reflecting in this way, based on knowledge, one comes to recognize that the teacher of the path, the teacher who presented the Four Noble Truths and how to gain freedom from suffering, the Buddha is an authentic or valid being. Moreover, his teachings are also authentic or valid, as are all the great practitioners from the time of the Buddhas, those great pandits from India, such as Nagarjuna, as well as all the great masters that in the lineage from then, right up to one's lamas in this very life, are all valid, authentic beings. And from this then too, one's faith becomes unshakable, independence on having reflected in this way.
곰내는 아주 녀모 방야데 동년도 비셔로 곰발에 때는 녀모 방고를 제가 되네기 곰발에 때네 하는 아주 탈바다 탐지 김벽고 도고 그래서 다다 탐지 탈바다 탐지 김벽고 관 간에서 토부리 람나다 아주게 다 텔야 an dangbo lam nyamlen chide lam karli gorsen dangbo cholam dene cholam dene komlam dene miloblam seade doschene nga ju rimba nga lam nyamlen rimba dela da doschene rimba nga le yongro.
Recognizing then that the attainment of both liberation and enlightenment requires the realization of the wisdom directly realizing emptiness, because it's the wisdom that realizes emptiness that is able to completely eradicate the afflictions together with their seeds. The stream of progression that the practitioner aims to develop within their own mind is presented in the 5 paths. Starting with the path of accumulation, the first path, the second being the path of preparation, the third the path of seeing, the fourth the path of meditation, and finally the Buddha ground of the path of no more training.
kowe dunga liya ane nga dunga yi rangshin tige samda ane dunga dele dunga thongile dunga dele thar kukudu sempege denegi dunga dele thar pege tharpa thokudu sempe tharpa donyi samba de jang jirwada jisa da nga rang kowe dunga dele de thar kukudu jisa nga rang kowe dunga dele thar je tharpa nyomo sabana jeba pangba tharpa se de thokudu sempege da denegi samno taji tharpa thobige samba de 야네 야도 장 공발에 되네 다 좀 많이 버시 깨봐이나 당 되네게 내중어 삼바 좀 많이 깨봐이나 되네 초람 세대 깨봐야지 다등한 디 년되다 란제람서 랑니 안 탈바 토부도 선배군에 라제 탈바 등에 삼바 장진에 되네 좀 많이 깨야도 디 초람 세대 깨야로.
Practitioners are of different types. So the 2 types of practitioners, the hero and solitary realizer, that falls under the Tibetan collection of practitioners, they have as their initial primary meditation reflecting on the sufferings of samsara in order to give about a determination to gain liberation from the sufferings of samsara. So they're training, and then thereby they will engage in training their mind so as to achieve liberation from samsara. And how to achieve liberation from samsara? Finally, the afflictions together with their seeds have to be eradicated. But for those to be eradicated, when the practitioner of the hero and solitary realizer lineage first meditates extensively on the sufferings of samsara so as to give rise to a determination to emerge from the suffering realms of samsara into the state of liberation from suffering or freedom from suffering. And when they have generated definite emergence that is uncontrived, then the practitioner of the hero or solitary realizer type has achieved their path of accumulation.
Andenigi Tarbaduni Jumamikedu Solam Tovare, that Solam Minerasoda, Nyan Tubada, Sambada, Gumba, Jine, and the Jig Tosaya de Jine, and Jig Chopuada, Chasevala Sovada, Denigi and Jimbe Yamne Alaba, Surim Soyalaso, Denigi and Jig Sunam Yusosa, Bottomeva Sayache, Sunam Yusosa. That Dini Sosa name, Denigi Sunam Yusosa, Savicella, Dini, Donile Mipigi. Donye gom, donye le mipe ki shine, da shine drup de reza, da donye le mipe zeshi de shine drup, odo shine gom je, dine shine di nga ne, ane jik donye le zeshi de nyamba shebe, nyamba shane, donye le mipe shila, songzhe se, tobyon do, lakdong tobyon do, dine, ane cholam dine ya, jolam basa cha song re jere.
Continuing to review what we looked at last time, this practitioner of the hero and solitary realizer type, who generates uncontrived definite emergence, attains at that point the path of accumulation. On the path of accumulation, they engage in hearing, reflecting, and meditating, accumulating extensive merit through practices such as generosity and so forth. In this process of hearing, reflecting, and meditating, and accumulating of merit, they will also meditate on emptiness. Initially, they will strive to meditate on emptiness with the mind of calm abiding, and they'll continue throughout the duration of the path of accumulation to first strive to meditate on meditate on emptiness with calm abiding. Then they will be able to meditate on emptiness with calm abiding, and continuing on the path of accumulation, they will be trying to meditate on emptiness with initially calm abiding, and then trying to meditate as well with meditative insight. And they'll continue this process throughout the path of accumulation. Again, hearing, reflecting, and meditating, accumulating merit acts such as generosity, and meditating on emptiness, primarily with calm abiding. And when they get to the point when they are able to realize emptiness with not just calm abiding, but the actual union of calm abiding and meditative insight, at that point they achieve the path of preparation. So just like the entry point into their path of accumulation is the attainment of uncontrived definite emergence, the entry point to the path of preparation is realizing emptiness with a union of calm abiding and meditative insight.
Denegi Tony Doyadi Solam Maki Niela Tony Topa Yungre, Solam Topsane Tony Topa Yungrewa, then Tony to then Solamineraso, that Tony Lemi Shine Drukorwa. Then it Tony Lemi Shine Drupsane, Shine and Tony Lami Piggy, and Shineting on the Laudon Drupche, Tene Laudon girl. Chetupi Trabe Shinjang Dewakidu and the Shilason de Chadu, Dene Jolambasa Charu.
The entry point for the Tibetan practitioner to the path of accumulation is the generation of uncontrived definite emergence. So therefore, such a practitioner who attains the path of accumulation may or may not have a realization of emptiness. Whether if they don't have a realization of emptiness, once the path of accumulation has been achieved, amongst their varying activities, such as hearing, reflecting, and meditating, accumulation of merit, and so forth, they will be striving to gain a realization of emptiness. And when they have attained a realization of emptiness, then they'll strive to hold that realization with calm abiding, and when they can, they will continue in their training to be able to hold this, to keep realizing emptiness, hold it with calm abiding, and trying to also reflect with meditative insight. So that would be for the person who hasn't realized emptiness before the attainment of uncontrived definite emergence and the path of accumulation. For the practitioner who first gains a realization of emptiness and then develops uncontrived definite emergence and attains a path of accumulation, the sequence is very similar. Now they have attained the path of accumulation, and the only difference with the first practitioner is they have already achieved a realization of emptiness, but they will now strive to realize emptiness and hold it with calm abiding. And thereafter, when they're successful in realizing emptiness and holding it with calm abiding, they will continue this process, realizing emptiness, holding it calm abiding, but now trying to realize it with also meditative insight. And eventually, whether the practitioner realized emptiness before or only after generating or realizing uncontrived definite emergence, the entry point is the same to the next part, the second part, the path of preparation, which is realizing emptiness with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight.
Kaze solam dike tongbanile mine tangbo solam ne ga so da tongbanile tongbanyi mi ji shine chupsarwan da shine di ngane da haodong la jeba che yong du jeba che be ka so da haodong jeba che ne Laudon Drubine, Laudon Gulemajevaja, Laudon Drubiki, Gapsuda Solamba Chadirova, that Laudon Druba Shilesude Geva, Nanko Jolama Chasova, Dini Nyamshalama, Sonakon the Twinji Varuchi, or Twinji Chadirova.
To attain the path of accumulation for the Theravada practitioner, this is dependent on the generation of uncontrived definite emergence. This will come with the attainment of prior attainment of calm abiding. What the practitioner will be needing to do is now realize emptiness, whether newly or if they've realized it previously, to continue to realize it, but this subtler object of emptiness, subtler as opposed to the object which is definite emergence, now needs to be held with calm abiding. Calm abiding is the mind of single-pointed concentration. So the practitioner will engage in analysis, realize emptiness, and then try to hold the subtle object of emptiness single-pointedly, undistractedly. And when they are able to do that, they'll be able to, at will, realize emptiness and hold it with calm abiding. But whilst they can hold this realization of emptiness without distraction, they cannot analyze further. But this is what they need to do, to be able to meditate analytically, continuing to use reasons without any distraction. So they'll start again to engage with analytical meditation, but this will serve to break their single-pointed concentration. And they will continue this process of realizing emptiness, then holding it with calm abiding, then trying to analyze further, but losing their calm abiding, regenerating it, until they get to the point where they can realize emptiness, hold it with calm abiding, and continue to analyze without losing their calm abiding at all. And this is where they'll have the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, where the practitioner is able to realize emptiness with hold their realization of emptiness with single-pointed concentration, calm abiding, and continue to analyze without their single-pointed concentration being harmed in the slightest. This is the union of calm abiding and meditative insight. It is a meditative equipoise, and it's where the term union implies that both these minds, calm abiding and meditative insight, are manifest or active together at the same time, conjoined. So that's the meaning of the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, and that is and the object is emptiness, and that is the entry point to the path of preparation.
Jolam Topsane dene, Jolam Topsane dene yang, or Jiki Sonam Sosaya Chaguru, Saurba, Sonam Jimbata, Surimsuba, Surimsuya, Subi, Yamlenja, the Nega and the Conjola, Chobo Puyala Sobata, the Nigi, the Sonam Swakaraga, Sao by the Chazan Dushine, Sonam Yosa. The net Sosam Sonam Yosa, that Sonam Yoso, Jabdin, Chik Dakoron, Chik. Korozuge Nyamyong Tony, Lamiki, Lamding Tonda, that and get that Tolam, Jolamnia, Tolam Toyaki, Dondala, Pashi Toyaki, Nubaruji, Gome, Nubaleo, Tenia, Dombanila Yambasha, Dombanila Yambasha Goreda, that Dombanila Yambashane, that the Yambashabe, Yamshati, Dambodi, that Jolam Yamsha Chagore. The Niki Dombani, the Yambashane. Denigi Dongbani Pao Gom Yambashan, Denia Nuba Cherichinje, and the Jik Dongbani, the Jolam Yasu Dongbani, Yambashe, Yamja Shedi, don't you Dunjusu Dogore, don't you Mosum Dogo Marwa, don't you Dunjusu Dogore, Mosum Dogo Mare. Just a Denigi Yambashane, Deni Jolam de, Dongbani Yambashi Jolam de, don't you Mosum Toba Chai, Mosum Tobi, Guru, and it tells me a casore, Tolam Barchemolam Sachagore. Diten then Yamopo Kunda, Dazim Kundagi, Muyi Yambos Chagore, Muyi Yambos Chavare, and then Tolam Barshemon Tobare, and the Tolamba Chasaware, Chavares, Gansa de Tolamba, Quigi, Lamdi Tolam Barshemon Lamsach. nyummo kundage nyummo bo kundage ngwe nyembo sigore ngwe that don't you let me show na jan jigu su bela me labji ga yunguru wa de la me temba yunguru la me ma temba na so so nyam nyo thone yunguru wa de
Thus far then in the review we looked at reviewed what we looked at last week, in brief the attainment of the path of accumulation and the attainment of the path of preparation. Now with the path of preparation achieved, the practitioner will readily be able to re-enter, to continue to realize emptiness with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, which is that the mind of single point of concentration, realizing emptiness, and whilst this realization is held without distraction, analysis can continue. And this practitioner will, under the guidance of their teacher, be guided in how to develop this realization ever more profoundly, as well as between meditation sessions will engage in the extensive accumulation of merit through acts of generosity, ethical restraint, patience, and so forth, alternating between the accumulation of merit and once again entering into meditative equipoise on emptiness, realizing emptiness still via a meaning generality, but with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight. So this realization of emptiness was the entry point into the path of preparation, and throughout the path of preparation, the practitioner, guided, encouraged by their spiritual teacher, will continue to meditate on emptiness, realizing emptiness via or by means of a meaning generality and with a consciousness that is a union of calm abiding and meditative insight. And throughout this process of the path of preparation, the accumulations of merit and wisdom are being accumulated, and they're empowering or strengthening this realization of emptiness, this realizing consciousness, and eventually this consciousness that has realized emptiness by means of a meaning generality, and this consciousness which is also a union of calm abiding and meditative insight, will be growing in strength throughout all these meditations, empowered by the accumulations of merit and wisdom, and eventually emptiness will be realized directly, no longer via or by means of a meaning generality, but directly. It's at that point that an unobstructed path of the path of seeing, the third path, is achieved. And at that point of attaining this unobstructed path of the path of seeing, and this unobstructed path is the direct antidote to the acquired afflictions, the practitioner is now a practitioner of the path of seeing, an Arya being. So I'll just repeat that last bit again. Developing this consciousness that is realizing emptiness throughout the path of preparation. Eventually this consciousness, which is a union of calm abiding and meditative insight, realizing emptiness by means of a meaning generality or inferentially, comes to realize emptiness directly. So the consciousness has been developed in strength. And now, in the moment that emptiness is directly realized, so not by means of a meaning generality, or you could say that emptiness is directly seen, then the path of seeing is achieved, which is, and it is when the path of seeing is achieved, that is an unobstructed path. This realization of emptiness is an unobstructed path, and that unobstructed path is the direct antidote to the acquired afflictions, and the practitioner themselves are called a practitioner of the path of seeing, or an Arya being.
Dene rimgi tongi ngosumdo tongwi tonglam chö kunchok lamden tobanas. Sideta nga zuydishi cholam la tongba ila nyamba shane nyamba shabi ngane dene ma jine tongba ngosum tongwi an tonglam chagyures. Andi chö kunchok ayres, lamden res. Ta dos jine disi warwada. Dene rimgi sideta rimgi la do cholam gi kapsu tongba ila nyamba sha. Den ma ya ngo gongbi de chinje den tongba nyungo sum tong de an tonglam chawares an di ya chö koncho res an de ming lam den res che tonglam da chö koncho lam den tobares.
The segment I've just given, this then is where we starting tonight. Last week we looked at the paths of accumulation and preparation. Now we cross into the attainment of the path of seeing. So we're on page 25, just more than halfway down, the third bullet point. After further progression, emptiness is seen directly, and the path of seeing, the Dharma jewel, and a true path is attained. So just to say as an aside, the word we have here is emptiness is seen directly. It's the same word as in path of seeing, and the meaning is realized. Emptiness is realized directly or seen directly.
Now, Delia and Tonlam Dangbo Tobare and the Lamden said Dangbo Tobare, Chokonjo Dangbo Tobares. The Chokonjo de Langanioa, Lamden Dang Gokden Yisel. The Digos that the Chokonjo Nana Lamdin or you Chokon Top Ramado, Gokden the Tobiama, Gokden Chokonjo Gokden said the Lea Mardashina Tobura.
Looking at the text here, it says, when the path of seeing is attained, the Dharma jewel and a true path is achieved. So in the moment of achieving the path of seeing, the practitioner's consciousness is a consciousness of the path of seeing. It's the Dharma jewel and a true path. And as we heard last time, the Dharma jewel consists of two parts, maybe, two aspects, true paths and true cessations. But now at this point, the moment of achieving the Dharma jewel, the moment of achieving the path of seeing and the Dharma jewel here in this moment doesn't yet have both aspects. It has the aspect just of true paths. It doesn't have the aspect yet of true cessations.
The Dangbo Toyagi, the Tonlam Barche Malam Sigurva, Tonlam Barche Malare, Chisa Barche Malam Radu. Then Dasim Kunda Sabunda Jibiki Nimbo, Muyimbo Jigore, Muyimbo Mato, Bango, Bango Maro, Mabamanza, Gotimatobare. Yomoba, Dasin Sabon, Dasim Kunda, Sabona Jibi, Sabona Jiba, the Nimbo Hege, Dasin Re, Dasim Kunda Sorda, Dasim Kunda, Dasim Kunda, Saboni Nimbores, Muyimbo, Chisamu Nimbo Inza, that the Bango Mare, Mabambaza.
Why is it the case then that when in the moment of achieving the path of seeing that the Dharma jewel has been achieved, but only the aspect that is the true path and not yet the aspect of true cessation? So here, with the attainment of the path of seeing, the mind is now the mind of the wisdom of the practitioner, which is the wisdom now directly realizing emptiness. This wisdom is the path of seeing. It is the unobstructed path of seeing. And it is the direct antidote to the acquired ignorance of self-grasping. Therefore, and it is a true path, but it is being the direct antidote to the acquired ignorance of self-grasping. This acquired ignorance of self-grasping is yet to be abandoned. Therefore, what has been achieved is a path that will abandon the acquired ignorance of self-grasping, but has yet to abandon the acquired ignorance of self-grasping. So therefore the direct antidote is doing its a process of abandoning, but the abandonment has yet to be achieved. Therefore, the true path, the direct antidote, has been achieved, but the true cessation of having abandoned the acquired ignorance of self-grasping, this is still to be attained.
Di nyimbo che de sora. Di se de garisen tholam ba shemalam de sora. Di nyimbo che de la gyo di lan so tholam ba shemalam de nyimbo chi go re je. Su nyimbo yu su lo nyimbo chi go re den sing kun da sa den sing kun da so kun ju den ba dang la den sing kun da de nyimbo chi go re se de dang de den sing kun da kun ju den ba se de ce ge nyombo dunga de mi gyu zo de kun ju de dunga de ba de gyu de ga kun ju de ba wa denpa shi nanda dunga denpa kunju denpa rwa, dunga denpa sayade tebu rwa, di gyu kare sen kunju denpa rwa, kunju denpa shi. Dunga denpa gyu di kare tene kunju denpa le tene kikiri la rwa, kunju denpa de kare la tene zungoyo songyo de le da nyo momba, di na de nyo momba de kare sen denzin kunda sayade, denzin la shikura, chisa di na de kunju denpa denzin kunda sayore, denzin kunda, so kunju tenpa dang se desi wen nyembo chi go le che le china desi wen kunda kunda de se da de dung kunda ki pe na nga ju de dung den bi gyu de le kunju tenpa le la ro kunju den bi gyu so de ga la na denzin de le la ro ta denzin di na lo le kunda da lan ji ni che yo de da de kunda ki de le se denzin kunda denzin de lan ji de ra ba ni de kunda ni de 군다데 rakpare, tangiye chamache kwenye nane. Chisa dade de thonglam nyagoso kari nyembo chigore, tenzi kunda di ngonyen chigore, tenzi kunda ki korang dang korang sabon de ngonyen chigore, yashe kunda, kunje tenpa tanga sayade.
This practitioner who's progressed through the path of preparation, strengthening their inferential realization of emptiness, now comes to realize emptiness directly. So this consciousness, this wisdom, which is the path of preparation, has now come to realize emptiness directly and is the consciousness of the path of seeing. This consciousness is the path of seeing. In this first moment, this consciousness is a true path, and in particular, it's a true path of the path of seeing, in particular, the unobstructed path of the path of seeing. So that's all about the consciousness, describing this consciousness in different ways, this consciousness which is the wisdom directly realizing emptiness. So I'll say that again, because we're talking about the one consciousness in the mind of the yogin who is directly realizing emptiness. This consciousness, which is the wisdom directly realizing emptiness, is the path of seeing, is an unobstructed path, and is the direct antidote to the acquired ignorance of self-grasping. So these are all different ways to talk about this consciousness and what it is an antidote to, the ignorance of self-grasping. So this practitioner entered into the path of accumulation with a determination to gain freedom from suffering, liberation. So they have meditated extensively on the sufferings of samsara, thereby developed a determination to emerge from the suffering realms of samsara. To have given rise to that determination, not only did they come to recognize the sufferings of samsara, the first noble truth, but also their origins, the second noble truth, recognizing that the origin of all suffering is our karma, which has been accumulated by our afflicted minds, which have as their root the ignorance of self-grasping. So this would have all long before been realized, strengthened along the progression, or as the mind develops along the paths of accumulation and preparation. Now, the path of seeing has been attained, and the direct antidote to the root cause of suffering has been developed. So when we say the direct antidote, it means this mind itself, the yogin's mind realizing emptiness directly, that mind itself is the direct antidote to the ignorance of self-grasping, the root cause of suffering. Now, the ignorance of self-grasping has two divisions, two types, maybe two divisions. The one is acquired, the second is innate. Here, we're talking about the acquired ignorance of self-grasping together with its seeds. That is what this wisdom is the direct antidote. So again, the wisdom directly realizing emptiness is the direct antidote to the ignorance of self-grasping. This initial wisdom directly realizing emptiness, the unobstructed path of the path of seeing, is the direct antidote to the acquired ignorance of self-grasping together with its seeds, not yet the innate ignorance of self-grasping and their seeds, and its seeds.
Ondu sin nyembo cheche, tadu sin nyembo che tonye la nyambar sha che komdu nyembo chi kores. Tadene ngandre phumbo so dunga demba rakrimne tendu pangbegi godin tobegi gotsuk sidwa. Gotsuk sidi. Tobi gotsuk sidi. Gotsuk sidi. Dadi 제가 디네게 대시 바시 말음 님부도 곰네 아니 간좀 질야 대중군다 사본에 제바 빵베 빵모두 고든 토바래다 다디네 고든 토바 고주 바래와다 고주 살와다 고든 톱사로 디 고든 토바래제 고든 토비 고숙세 고든 토바래 녀모바 군다 빵베 빵보 고든 톱주고레스 제가다 디 고든 토비도 다 최고권조 대시 만족이 빵바 최고권조디 토바래 빵비 최고권조 토바래 다디 디 람델라 고든 토비게 람델라 디냐갑지 통람델라 민갈라서 통람 남조람 통람델라 통람 남조람제 다디 니데 통람 남조람 코로 최고권조래 통람야래 남조람제 다 대시 당보들 바시말라 그러와 다 바시말은 파바시 매버서 살제 다 콜은 넘버 조아시드 바시들 조 차와래서 남조람다 바시 매버서서 제가 남조람시 제가 바시 녀모 군다 사본나 제바 빵바인자 대시 바시에서 바시 말람라도 디 지금 탈비고와 토발라 바시에 가려면 대디 탈비고와 토발라 바도 지겐 줘와 탈비고와 토발라 바도 지겐 가래서는 녀모고 군다다 사본디기 바도 지고로와 아주 디빵고면 맞으나 타바토투가 디빵고로와 니 녀보 제들 바치 매람세요 바치리 매바서에기 고주베 람세요 군다로와 군다게 되지 군다로와 다 디빵차로와 빵베 남조람 토비오도 빵베 남조람라 넘버 조와라데 가리 조와레 대시 녀모 군다디 빵바 매바선 델로 조와레서 데 바르시데 매바차 바르시를 조사레다 바르시를 조와레서 그래서 빵사와레서 진짜 디 람델라 안 통람 남조람 민다 남조람라고 그래 민제바 잡사르다 남조람시고 그래서 균 바르시데 바 조사와레서 빵사와레서 제나다 데니기 남조람제 데니기 고 녀모바 빵베 빵바 델라 아니 고텐 델라 아니 고텐스 빵베 빵바 델라 민 고텐스 가르고고스 빵베 빵바 고텐 데토바 가서 빵베 최고조시 제가 니가서다 남조람 통해도 니가서다 최고조 니가리고래 고 람용오기베 최고조 리고래 아니 고텐오기베 최고조 니가 톱사래 그래서 세우 차서
What's just been presented is covered in the beginning of the next bullet point. This then is the direct antidote to true origins, such as the acquired afflictive mind of true grasping.
고축 세대. 고진 더비 고축.
Yeah, the whole thing. This then is the direct antidote to true origins, such as the acquired afflictive mind of true grasping, and also begins the attainment of true cessations, the complete abandonment of true sufferings, such as rebirth in the lower realms. So first, I'll recap what Genna said before, and then we'll flow into what Genna's just said now. The path of seeing is attained when the inferential realization of emptiness, where emptiness is realized by means of or via a meaning generality, when that consciousness has been developed so well or so powerfully that now emptiness is realized without the need of a meaning generality and is realized directly, the path of seeing in that instant is attained. This wisdom that is now directly realizing emptiness is a wisdom of the path of seeing, and it is the attainment, it is an unobstructed path of the path of seeing. It is a Dharma jewel, and it is a true path. The meditator continues in this meditation realizing emptiness. Now to come to, so this is where the meditator is, directly realizing emptiness in meditative equipoise. Now, we'll leave the meditator there to continue, and we'll look at what's happening. This consciousness, which is realizing emptiness directly, is an unobstructed path. What does this term unobstructed mean? It means that an obstruction is being overcome. And what is the obstruction at this point, at the attainment of path of seeing? It is the acquired ignorance of self-grasping, or the acquired ignorance of true grasping. That is the obstruction. And it is being abandoned by the Dharma jewel, in particular the aspect which is the true path. So that's where the person is. So this, up to this point, ties with a previous bullet point, where just added in the explanation of this term, unobstructed path. It refers to an obstruction being eradicated, and at this point, the obstruction is the ignorance of true the acquired ignorance of true grasping. This then is being abandoned, and when it's abandoned, it's when it's been eradicated, this consciousness is no longer, it's just applying different name to the same consciousness as it develops in its strength or progresses. This consciousness is now called a liberator path. It's no longer called an unobstructed path, it's now called a liberator path, because it is liberated from that obstruction, from the acquired ignorance of self-grasping together with its seeds. So it's liberated from that obstruction, hence it's called a liberated path, whereas prior to that it was an unobstructed path. Now, being liberated from that obstruction, a true cessation has been achieved. Now the Dharma jewel has both components of a true path and a true cessation. So at this point, the practitioner is still on the path of seeing, and they have generated the Dharma jewel, and now it has both aspects, the Dharma jewel of the true paths and true cessations. Reading this again, the same bullet point. This then is the direct antidote to true origins, such as the acquired afflictive mind of true grasping, and also begins the attainment of true cessations. So what we see in this segment, and also begins the attainment of true cessations, is this is the first of several true cessations. So therefore, just like when one starts on a particular task, one would say, I've begun, but I haven't completed. So here, the work of the Arya being has started. The work of the hero of solitary realizer has been going on for a while, but only now, in this meditation, have they become included amongst Arya beings, and their work has now started, and they have achieved the first of a number of true cessations.
The Lord is Talot Pashuk Church in the Kaba de Shuni, Shia Gozu, Denigi, Dina, Shia Gozu Nipa, Gozune, Kaba Bet Shumasabadu, and the Nehab Lord Sawachurva, the Tolam Barsimalam city. That Barsimalam did to the Kaba Shus Tare, Dena, Kaba Shubi, Chudiman Hadi, Gamio, Mara Chudiore. Just Barsimalam, the Kaba de Shusaware, in a Digi Lord, the Kapa Shusar, the Chudu come to your mother, the Negapida, Lord, the Lord Nashindi, that Barsimalam said, Yomobo, Saban, the Java, Meva Sue Sarate, Larry Anja Magia, Nubad Meva Sue to Yoma. Casanem Kapa the Shusar, Chudu Makambana, Lord Susan, and Angeligation, Chudi Kapa Chadu, Yanja Kapa Chaya, Gohabiorova, on Dinashi, Barsimalam, the Yomobas, Saban, Kunza Sabana Java. Never separate many Chunashinji, Zangmashaga Maragaze, Yanja and Maya did Timbudi Toyo Mare, she's not the Barsimalamsio. That in Mahasu Lord, the March, the Pashuk Church is in the Chudi Kamia, comes in the Chudi Park, Kamshadu, Kamsayadu, Lord in Nubachurva, Kamsadu, the Nigger Law Nubadi, Namdrella Najibari. She's a Namdrella Mikiadu, Chukambanashi. Sabona Jeba Basha, Sabon the Kunda Sabona Jeba Papangane, and the Yangar and Uniki never says that. Pero Tire.
We take it as an analogy. So if someone's living somewhere much colder than here, then they have a ball of ice. And this ball of ice, they want to melt, so they will take it towards a heater, hold it by a heater in order to melt it. But they want this ball of ice not merely to melt, but they want to never have this ball of ice again, so they'll want the water to evaporate as well. This is their goal. So the first step, which we'll liken to the path of accumulation and preparation, is the moving of the ball of ice next to the heater. Then, when it comes next to the heater, and in the moment it arrives there, it will start to melt. The moment of arriving by the heater is the attainment of the path of seeing, and it comes together with the commencement of the melting of this ball of ice, and it's and this then is the unobstructed path. And it will melt, 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 leaving just a puddle. But there's still water. If now the container in which this now puddle of water is removed from the heater, it will once again form ice. So therefore, we keep the water next to the heater a bit longer, until the water is completely evaporated. This then is the attainment of the liberated path of the path of seeing. Now, that ball of ice can never reform, because the water has completely gone. This then is likened to the acquired ignorance of true grasping and its seeds being ceasing due to the generation of the liberated path, which is a true cessation. That level of affliction, the acquired ignorance of true grasping and their seeds, can never ever ripen or rise again.
Adelia Andregu Pumbo so Dunga Demba Rapa Rimne ngandre deji loy direda ngandre phungbo so dungwa demba rawa rimne tendu pambi ki ko ten thobi ko chuk se doa cheza ngandre phungbo so dungwa demba se de ta ngandre le ke le da nyandre ke yu ane sabe saya ke le saya yu mare bacha da kasar mari bakunda ni pang cha ba ye se ro da cheza da ngandre dunga le ngandre so dunga le dunga rapa le rimdu tenne pang pa se ore cheza da ngandre phungbo se de da ngandre ke le da nyomo wangi dunjugi le da nyomo phungbo sa tene le da nyomo wangi kewa lembegi idagi phungbo da le da nyomo kyo nyeyu phungbo de ye ngandre phungbo se ro so se ngandre phungbo so se ti se ore dan ngandre meni jolam tholam mato benya 가서 jolam 톱찬에 아니 ngandre keegi gyune ke yo ma ke leda nyomo ngandre kewa yo mar다 ke kigo 말에 제래 jolam men tholam 톱고고 말에 지다 저기 ngandre kewa le de leda nyomo 원기 ngandre nyawa kewa le da ida kewa dunre kewa le ba de gedi me ba chagiresene tholam 톱찬에 양게 kewa le ba yo 말에서는 디게 warlemba 용그리에 소람 톱나야 된 깨왕에 레기 왕기 ngandole ke warlemba 용그리에스 다 졸람 죄제모 쇠바세데 졸람 쇠바 톱사네 디니 균에 깨와 용구 말에스 깨와 탐질래 다 ngandole ke 와데 균에 레다 녀모 왕기 ngandole ke 와데 균에 용구 말에 제래 이게 지고 말 제다디 ngandre kewa de cholam thopsane ngandre keore ki marelane kewa yunguri esere ane gedini kewa meba chagirilane jolam sebas thopyodi da ngandre kewa meba deng thopsare deng thobare eje dene ngandre kewa yungu mare ejere 근데 초람다 초람 내갑수 ngandre kewa sigiri yunguri 인지미디 kewa요 말와 kewa yunguri bes네 자와기는 기와 매바 차기를 배선 자기 말에 기와 시기리 해제 다 졸람 쇠바세 톱차나 ngandol 기와 자와기는 용 말에 기기 말에 해제
Looking at the end of this bullet point, the complete abandonment of true sufferings, such as rebirth in the lower realms. Let's unpack this last bit, such as rebirth in the lower realms. So when one generates uncontrived definite emergence, and this Tibetan practitioner attains their path of accumulation, you remember it was mentioned there are three divisions, the small level, middle level, and great level. Then and whilst they're training there, they're developing the realization of emptiness, accumulating wisdom, accumulating merit, and when they realize emptiness inferentially with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, they enter into the path of preparation. So throughout this entire prior process of being on the path of accumulation, there remains the possibility that they may be born in the lower realms, whether it's an animal, a spirit, or in the hell realms. It's not necessarily that they will be born in the lower realms, but that still remains a possibility. Now they've achieved the path of preparation. And whilst the path of accumulation had those three levels, the path of preparation has four. The first being peak, the second being heat, the third being patience, or forbearance it's often translated. With the attainment of this third of the four levels of the path of preparation, that of patience or forbearance, at that point, the door to rebirth in the lower realms is already closed. So this is a practitioner who's on the third, who has now achieved the third of the four levels of the path of preparation, heat, peak, forbearance, and still supreme Dharma, I think it's called?
Supreme Dharma.
Supreme Mundane Dharma. Supreme Mundane Dharma is still to come, but they have achieved the third level, that of forbearance. And here already, on the path of preparation, they close the door to rebirth in the lower realms.
rimne tendu panse rakpa se da pene nyebi dunga phumbo de rakpa dile de da chawa de mini 당한 저기 니다 풍부에 돼서 차 책으로 되네게는 안 저기 dundugi pumbo di des ta karasane chawa da raba se di le shukchi bu dunga ma nya de kanga di raba da ne dile des nywa de tingse dile des chwa de chagro cha rimba raba andu pumbo so Ale ngandu pumbo so dungara ngandu pumbo so dunga demba rakpa rimne pangas rakrimne pangas tangbo rakpa de pangu pandu 제산디 메기와 메바 차로 그래서 이내다 통람 톱산에 하다 통람 톱산에다 졸람 쇠반에 메바자 통람 톱내다 안솔 균이기 원래니 원기와 균이 메바라와 다 코와레 기와렘바 요마레베스네 요레제르다 제산 밀리 기와렘 레다 녀모 원기 통람 톱산에야 아니 제수 안에 레다 녀모 밀리 기와렘바 용그레 할레 기와렘바 용그레제 제사다 헤이 레다 녀모 옹기 지금 아주 미 풍부되다 레이 풍부되게 다디 차와르체 난 송기 레다 녀 풍부되게 돼 사과체 제자데 데네기 고된 토비오도 난 송기 풍부 사과되게 레다 녀모 개발렘바데 메바차그레스 레요 마레서 자 이나다 안에 가르레야 하워스네 미다 레이다 라다 미우 개발 레다 녀모 개발렘바 요레 다디 갈방것은 다짐바시나 곰람토 데네야 방고레시고로 메바서 그래시고로 rakrim sejmine 제산 rakrimse rakse rakpal 고고래 제 림세데 당보 rakpadiye 방 되네 니바 참어디 예방 시고로다 차와디 방세 림바 마도 딥질 방도 말이라 그러 제산 간주 풍보당 레다 녀모 간주 풍보대당 레다 녀모 저 간주기 사다 미 풍보디게 동아덴바디게 뒤질 방투고래서 뒤질에 매바 방투고 말 림바신 방고래서 가르치즈 당보 rak바디 방 되는 이 차와디 방고래서 지난 되네 자다 미니절람 톱네 통람 토여도 고된 토여도 가르 방와래라는 레다 녀모 원간적이 풍보 델레께와래 말 레는 델레께와 매바 쇠사래 지오래
Okay, just again, I was clearing up some confusion for myself with the translation. The written translation is fine. There are just some words I didn't include. So this is why I got a bit of confused. One we wouldn't really usually say, which such as rebirth in the aggregates of the lower realms. So that the word aggregates I didn't put in here, but that's we don't really talk like that. The other one was the complete abandonment of true sufferings. Also begins the attainment of true cessations, the complete abandonment of true sufferings. So the Tibetan uses the word for sequential abandonment and sequential attainment, sequential abandonment of true sufferings. But this particular word also shows coarseness to subtlety. So this is where I got a bit confused. Anyway, what Genla is saying is why on the path of preparation at the third level of forbearance, one closes the door to rebirth in the lower realms already then, now only when one much later achieves a path of seeing, only then is it here, in the context of the path of seeing, mentioned, such as rebirth in the lower realms. It can seem contradictory, because why here on the path of seeing is it being written that rebirth in the lower realms is now not attainable, or it's been prevented, when that actually was achieved several stages before. So this is, I hope what I've just said is clear, but anyway, on the third level, the path of preparation, this is where rebirth in the lower realms is stopped. But rebirth in the upper realms is still possible. And in fact, on the path of seeing, for the Tibetan practitioner, rebirth due to karma and afflictions, uncontrolled rebirth in samsara as a human or a god is still possible for this Tibetan practitioner. So the words that I don't have included here, there's sequence of coarseness. So there's abandonment of true sufferings through a sequence of subtlety or coarseness. What has already been, the door that's already been closed is to rebirth in the lower realms. What hasn't, and still on the path of seeing hasn't been closed, is rebirth in the upper realms under the control of the karma and the afflictions. So, prior to forbearance, level of the path of preparation, so on peak or heat or the path of accumulation, rebirth due to karma and afflictions in the lower realms is possible. Then on the path of preparation, at the third level, forbearance, it is now no longer possible. Only, so that's a very coarse level of sufferings that has been stopped, but rebirth in the higher realms as a human or god, due to karma and afflictions, remains possible. So this then is the meaning behind what it says here at the end of this bullet point, such as rebirth in the low realms, or in fact this entire second half, and also begins the attainment of true cessations, the sequential coarseness, or coarse and subtle, complete abandonment of true sufferings, such as rebirth in the lower realms.
Dum devoraje ko devoraje shejabaina tholam nyendugi bene tholam topsewe jela ane ngason le leda nyumo wonge ngason kewalemba yomare se worda kewalemba yomare es tarsa nyang ngason kewalemba dile tarsareda ane tholam topsane ande leda nyumo wel hada mili kewalemba de taryorbesen di taryomare hada mili kewal leda nyumo kewalemba yore esere yunguri esere.
So to say it more clearly, when the path of seeing has been achieved, the practitioner is already liberated from the possibility of being reborn in the lower realms. They have attained liberation from the possibility of being reborn due to karma and afflictions in the lower realms. They have not yet, though, attained liberation, or they have not yet achieved liberation from rebirth in the higher realms due to contaminated karma and affliction.
Dene Dana that Jay Tolam Topsane Yana Leda Numo Ongi and Hada Milia Kewalemba Yoresero. That Kewalemba that Tolam Topsane Hada Mili Kewalemba Le Sado Hal Kewa Peg Leda, Mi Kewa Pengile, Kewa Pimpig Le Sardo Saba Yorbes, Le Saba Yorbes. Le Saba Yorbes, Jualigua. Le Saba Yore Yomare Lana in the Tolam Topsane and Leda Numo Halakewa Lemba Yor, Milikewa Lemba Yor Larwada. That year by under Tolam Topsavi Jela, Halakewa Leda, Milikewa Lembe, Saya Yorbesene, Le Saya Yomares, Le Sardo Saba Yomares. Tolam Topsane, Milikewa Le Sardo Saba Yomare, Halakewa Le Saba Yomares. Tadikas and Yomo Bayor, the Yomo Badegi, Le Yomo Angi Mini Peg, Le Sabik Topic, Nubo Yomarcola, Yomo Badella. Cesa, Le Sardo Saba Yomares. The Le Sardo Saba Yomar, Le Saba Sagmarich, Le Sagmariceta, Tolam Topsana, Le Hada Miliki, Le Sagribes, and Le Sagmariceta. Teaching a milky egg to the milky egg, led a halic egg, less sagma, less sagma, and Masaba and Le Masaba and Halikiwa Lemba Yor, Milikiwa Lemba Yours, Le Masana Garaskiwa Lengur, Legi Wongikiwa Lemba Yom, Le Masana, Legi Wongikiwa Lemba said, Chagmin was as Digwa. Zadi, Lady Kawasan and Kion, Yema, Tolam Madom Yelia, many Sosoki Belam. le sa shaba le di yores on di le gi di ma kewalin gore je ma do nyama gi le sa shabe gi mi da hal kewalin le sa shabe gi le di gi to pi kewalin gore ma do tholam thop chane le sa ba sa che an di gi kewalin ba de ne yo ma le je ya wa ro di che ba ro che na.
Now this practitioner who's realized emptiness directly and has attained the path of seeing, they can't be reborn in the lower realms, but they can still be reborn under the power of karma and afflictions in the higher realms as a human or God. However, from this point of the attainment of the path of seeing, they will, whilst they will continue to accumulate karma, that karma does not have the potency or the power to propel a rebirth as a human or God. But they can and will still take rebirth as a human or God, but not under the power of the karma that they have accumulated since attaining the path of seeing, because this karma does not have the power to propel a rebirth. How then do they take rebirth as a human or God once having achieved the path of seeing? That would be due to the karmic imprints, a karmic imprint ripening, that's a karmic imprint that they had acquired prior to the attainment of the path of seeing. That would be able to ripen and propel a rebirth as a human or God. A karmic imprint acquired prior to the path of seeing.
그래서 통람 톱체에 통람 톱에도 동반 영어숨도 또 사와인자 때 강아 주길에 딘지 마릭바 요르데 딘지 마릭바디요 꾸네라제 나 질할게 레 사바사투고 밀리게 레 사바사투고 말해라. 그래서네 딘지디 아니 데니게 군 요모 펜지 레 사야기 꾸네라기 누버요 말해스. maybe 김자 가라라네 가사디 동반 영어숨도 또 사와래지네.
Why then does the karma that an Arya, a Tibetan Arya practitioner accumulates not have the power, why does that karma not have the power to propel a rebirth, whereas the karma they accumulated at any point prior to directly realizing emptiness does have the power to propel a rebirth, is because whilst this practitioner still has the ignorance of self-grasping, they've only abandoned the acquired ignorance of self-grasping together with their seeds, so they still have innate ignorance of self-grasping, but because emptiness has been directly realized, because in the continuum they have the wisdom directly realizing emptiness, this acquired ignorance of self-grasping, innate ignorance of self-grasping does not, whilst it will lead to the accumulation of karma, it doesn't have the strength to propel a rebirth. And the reason that this karma, despite there being still the ignorance of self-grasping, why this karma does not have the strength to propel a rebirth is because emptiness has been realized directly.
나데네게 냠네게 림바체 류아주게 지가주게 tumtamawa 나네 기셰베네 제라마와 난도리바 콘조 송탄 직체 나는 주게다 셈담바도 마랑주바도 마 텐주비기 송타로 지고 됐다 룩고에 미다로 니차고래.
If we think of the varying Buddhist philosophical tenets, we can group together those of the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, and on the other hand, we can group together those of the Chittamatra and the two Madhyamaka schools, the Svatrantika and the Prasangika. So we can group them into these two collections.
당한주 제라마와다 되데바 기시베나 단 제라마웨게 가르송고레 랍나 단 아주게 년뒤에 따좀버터야 다 솔람이 내가서 초사고야 차상 솔람이 싸고래 이제 제산 고로 로가제 싸고에다 로 개와 같이 싸고나 차상 솔람이 내가서 개와 숨사야다 개와 잘로서 봐사야다 되네기 이제 양 Sunum just Gawa, Anjibak, Gawal, Anja Gawal, Solam Titel, Sosa, the Tiniki, Gawa Sumla, Sopa, the Tiniki, Gawa Nasotanga Manchu Ungore. That's Solam Sosane, Dine Sosa, Solam, Sosa Sane, Jolamlia, Nyamba Shane, Jolamlia, Tombanila, Nyamba Shane, Dinigi, Nyamba Shabi, Dingone, Naneda, Nyamsha Tile Malawache, Judgmentivo Mato Padu, Nyamsha Sise. Jolamgi to Nyamba Shabi, Din Dahara, any judgmentivo top to Hurela.
First, looking at the grouping of tenets of the Vaibhashika and Sarchantika. So they will hold that the practitioner of the Theravada, the hero or solitary realizer, who's striving for their own individual liberation, when they achieve the path of accumulation through the generation of uncontrived definite emergence, they, whilst abiding on the path of accumulation, will accumulate over many lifetimes the entire accumulation of merit that is required in order to become a foe destroyer. And so this will be over many, many lifetimes, accumulating the merit this will be over 3 eons, accumulating this vast store of merit, all whilst abiding on the path of accumulation. Then, when they enter into the path of preparation, through realizing emptiness, with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, they will enter into the path of preparation within a meditative equipoise. Then, they will remain in that meditative equipoise, progressing from, at the start of the meditative equipoise, moving from the path of accumulation into the second path, the path of preparation, and will continue in that one session, that one meditative equipoise, throughout the path of preparation, throughout the path of seeing, right up to the attainment of a state of a foe destroyer. All of that will happen in a single meditation session.
Andine zada Jeramawadan Dodebagi Sumoda Jebaina, then the Tolam Topsane, Yagal Hada Milia Yawalemba Mindua, Yomarwa, the Jing and the Teshedi, that Tolam Topsana, Yagaleda, Yomo Ongi, Halakiwalemba Milia Yawalemba Yorelasoa, the Jeramawadan Dodebi Lu Shijabaina, on the Tolam Topsane, and then Leda Numo Halakiwalemba, the Mio Dikiwalemba Guniomarda, the Niki Yawalemba Guniomar, the Mevan Zagasan, Konyamsha Tunjilpa, Judgmentivo Totura.
I'm mentioning this now because those who follow the Buddhist teachings that are grouped together in the Vaibhashika and Sarchantika will not agree with what I've just said, which is that someone who attains the path of seeing will still take rebirth as a human or God under the influence of previously accumulated karma. They will not accept that. Why? Because in the meditative equipoise where the path of preparation, the previous path is attained, in that meditative equipoise, the practitioner will progress through the path of seeing and continue progressing to the attainment of a state of a foe destroyer. Therefore, they will attain complete liberation from samsara within the one meditation session. There will be no rebirth to be taken under the power of previously accumulated karma once the path of seeing has been achieved, because in that same meditation session where the second path of preparation is achieved, so too is the path of seeing, and so too is the state of a foe destroyer.
Ko nyambara shaane tachume dewa mato parala nyambara shaayagi tuzi dewa kase yore lo kase nyambara shaagore sayada dawa kase nyambara shaagore sayaji gansu denegi yaajik samlo yunguru wada jolam topne tachume mato parala nyambara shaane nyambara shaayagi nyamsha tunjil tachume tuku orwa jesa dene nyambara shaayadu denegi nyamsha tunjil jadi nyamsha de lo kase nyambara shaagore 다와가 제냠바 샤고레 세지 직삼로 중그루바 데디가선 솔람 소사베 내가서 가와 망부 소사고레세 Sum Sayada, Denegi, and the Ching Asada, the Nekao the Guyor Larua. That the Negata Sanje Nyamba Shan, Judgment Moto, but the Nyamba Sheven Nyamte Shata Giglia, and the Duyun the Nyamba Duyun the Lord Nyamba Shower, Tawaka Nyamba Shower, said some Davena. Visit Lord and Dawas Mongu means the Chuzi Hashish Masho. Chuzi Kashish Mato, Nyamba Shan, Judgment Toya Paradelea, and Chike, Chuzi Hashish Mato, the Negi, Gundu Meme, the Chida, Denish Kore said. Dina say what the Yomal bit the answers, the nigger some dana, the Tuesday Kashish now of us sang you to judgment of 2 men or some saldo. Solemn in the Rosso Sosa on. Is that in Dicas Naso Yoresh, Kashi Sesums and the Sosaji, the Nitoya. Kashi Nasa, Kashi Kawambo, the Kawahisa, did not so Sosogi, Yamlenda, the Nibal Papa de Yungurwa.
Okay, first, I'm going to translate or correct himself, and then continue with what Genla said. So I'll correct myself with the path of accumulation. So according to the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, the path of accumulation has a duration of great variety. Whilst it can take eons for the required merit to be accumulated, it will mostly be accumulated just within a process of a number of lifetimes, 3 lifetimes, 4 lifetimes, 5 lifetimes, etc. What will differentiate how long the path of accumulation takes is the skill, the quality of the particular practitioner. So that was the correction in terms of the duration of the path of accumulation. Now to come to what Genla said. So the path of preparation, as we've just heard, is with the attainment of the union of karma, abiding and meditative insight directly, inferentially realizing emptiness. And in this one meditative equipoise, the yogin will remain and progress through the path of preparation, path of seeing, and attain the state of a foe destroyer. So if the prior path, the path of accumulation, took several or many lifetimes, how long will this path of preparation take? Because what we've heard is it takes a single meditation session, a single meditative equipoise. But how long is that? It's actually only a few hours. Only a few hours. The path of accumulation will take several or many lifetimes. But from the path of preparation to the attainment of the state of a foe destroyer, according to the presentation of the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, this will only take some hours.
Denegi na di sam tamba ina judgment to nyamba shaba tela gyunu ko sa mare sa ngi sam ta tha di chin la gor ma do pe chin na ya chu ko go ma chu ha shi ko go se denegi se bo chi ngi che ma so chu denegi ko go se che ma so ka se pe chin na la ka so ne jolam la nyamba shebe nyam the nyamba sha the ten chi le ya judgment to guri se so ma to chu de na di ni me ko ko jimino ina da ngana joge Dumba Sanyo Jumne de Sangi Sonyo du, Gun La Nyambasha, Toran Sangi Ware Ladu, Di Barel Chuzashi Madoyo Marwa, Di Sam Nawenda, Jiwarwana.
Well, I've just stated about the duration of the path of preparation in accordance with the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika tenet. I've never seen in a text, but this would be my estimation, because according to their presentation of the enlightenment of Buddha Shakyamuni, he, as a bodhisattva, sat under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya and attained enlightenment over the duration of a single evening. So if a bodhisattva attains full enlightenment, Buddhahood, over the course of a single evening, progressing from the path of preparation to the final path leading to enlightenment, or Buddhahood, if that is done in just an evening, then surely so too would the the duration of from the path of preparation to the lesser attainment of individual liberation, of becoming a foe destroyer, so too should that be achieved within an evening. So just to emphasize that the hero solitude realizer who progresses in a single meditative equipoise from the path of preparation to the attainment of the state of foe destroyer, that takes just overnight, so some hours. This is my assertion based on the reason that I just gave. I haven't seen this in a text. So the attainment of individual liberation, that seems like a good point to finish for tonight. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Okay.
Questions?
Yeah. Of course.
You've mentioned several terminologies. Though in English, I'm uncertain what they mean. You mentioned true grasping. I'm not sure what you mean by that. But you also mentioned the word emptiness 56 times. And yes, I read several times. I read several pages in this book. I still don't know what you mean by emptiness. Can you explain that in layman's terms? Very philosophical minded. Though I have a good grasp of the English language, please explain it in layman's terms.
Sure. So can you explain in layman's terms
Yes.
the meaning of emptiness, what is meant by emptiness? Okay.
Di chuzi 당저 추지 디 추지디 긴 망고지 차시로 좀 망고지 뒤제네 좀 제네 직접되었지. 안데 디 추지에서 내가 쳐서 추지도 다 민도식으로 와. 제사다 나는 아주 두스네 추지디 간드스여스네 데니게 차시 데니 망고지를 맞된 바제 강 맞된 바제 추지 주어를 배스네 데니 요 말에스 추지세디 차시에 망부지를 띠네 초네 차시에 시간도 추지에서 민다바르제스 제가 안주 두스네 민다고 호롱 안주 데니 초 마고 호롱 언니 추지 여버스네 추지디기 파디 팝주디 파샤 직수고 차서 차시에 차서 파파고 손에 제네 데니 추지세디 디레샤세 추지디 냐야 말 추지 매바 차도 그래서 제가 파 차시 파 세세도 강점질에 두스네 디 배터리 파샤 디 capture 파샤 디 파신 간섭질이 두스네 차사 차셔지게 파 차사 세네 파카가 토셔버네 주제디 매마 차서 동바 차서래서 주디 동바 제사 데니기 간조 유체 간지시네 차사 유단 진 차셔 망부절로 초는 뉘네 직접도 봐 차고래서 데니기 마두바제 간나 맞된바 아니 두스테베네 균에 매바 차 매바차로 언델 동바 이식이 되잖아요.
The term emptiness or empty implies a lacking. So something is lacking, hence emptiness or empty. So to understand this, it's a big topic, it's the topic of this book. But to make an illustration that is clear to someone who knows the topic, to take an illustration of this clock. This clock appears to us as a clock. It appears to us, this is a clock. But when we think about it, what is it that makes this a clock? Because it appears to us as being a clock. We think, hang on, what about this makes it a clock? If I seek out, so this will be all done mentally. So the clock appears to our mind and it appears to us as being a clock. Now we ask ourselves, so what is it that makes this a clock? We'll, in our mind, break it up, the clock, seeking this nature by which it appears to exist, and we'll break it up into its many parts, and we'll recognize that this clock is dependent on many parts. And another way to look at the clock is that it is also dependent on many causes. So the clock, as we break it up mentally, we can't find any essence or nature by which it seems to be established or exist, because it's not independent of its parts or its causes, despite appearing to us as a clock, independent of parts or causes. But very clearly, when we break it up, we recognize it is dependent on parts and causes. But that doesn't mean, so therefore the clock is empty of existing by way of its own nature or essence, as it's empty of being independent of causes and parts. And it would be independent if it existed in the way that it appears, as by way of its own nature. So then how does it exist? So we can say, well, it's dependent, not independent, dependent on these parts being accumulated, dependent on causes, and dependent on being labeled by mind as a clock. So therefore, it is empty of existing from its own side, by way of its own nature, because we broke it up in our mind, and we couldn't find this establishing or defining nature or characteristic of the clock. It's empty of existing in that way. But the way it exists is imputed or labeled by mind.
Deni kangpa di deni ke chashe kanga madyo bache kangpa yuwa basin deni yuwa mares. Ani madyo bache yuwa bayi na nga zo kangpa du simchi di kangpa to di paa hi paa go zikpa di paa go ne du si simchi ne kangpa di meba charu go res. Chezan deni ke chashe kanga du si madyo bache kangpa yuwa mar di meba del tongpa yile go res. Chezan kangpa la rin na re. Chezan nga nzo supul che na nga zo ke supul yuwa res no yuwa res. Kanisi yoresin da nga zo xia dang, pa pa dang, ru guo dang, cha dang, dine mangpo zi cuo ba dine nga zo pungpo di yue de pare. Che zang dine nga zo ki kin mangpo chi lu cuo pa li dine yue pa ma to, nga zo nga pungpo xia di nge lakpa re sin pa xia, nini jiki du su pa yewa che ne pungpo di nye yo ma re. Che zang dine ki pungpo xia di nga zo ki cha xie la ma due pa kang la ma due ma cuo pa ki pungpo di me pa di la dong pa yin si go re. 지산다 간지 요래선 최 간지나 현실의 때에 야라 망부 초발의 때는 요래서 오래서
The clock is, it may appear to us as just being a clock, but if we look at how that appears, it will appear to us as if it's independent. It exists by way of its own nature or essence. But when we investigate, we cannot find this nature or essence. Therefore, so it's empty of existing by way of its own nature or essence. And also, it is not independent. Rather, it is dependent on causes and paths and being labeled by mind. So therefore, to put this in a succinct sentence, the clock is empty of existing in the way that it appears, but it still exists, but merely labeled by mind, onto an accumulation of parts. And this is the same for all phenomena. So take a building. Everyone will know a building has come about in dependence on a number of causes and then a number of parts. And once all these causes, the required causes have been completely accumulated and parts are completely accumulated, then, and only then, is this construction suitable to be called a building. Before that, it couldn't have been called a building, but rather a building site. And once it's a building, it's no longer suitable to be called a building site, because now it's a building. But this building, now let's say this one we're in, it will appear to our mind as if being independent, self-existent. But when we investigate, we realize it's impossible for it to exist this way. It's empty of existing in the way that it appears. It's empty of being independent, rather it is dependent. So it's empty of existing in the way that it appears, but it still exists. How? Dependent on being labeled or designated or imputed by mind onto a suitable basis, which is an accumulation of parts and causes. So this is the case for the clock, for the building, for our body. So we have a body. No one's denying we have a body. How does this body actually exist? Dependent on causes and parts and being labeled by mind. But when we investigate, we cannot find an essence or nature that establishes this body. So if, definitely in our mind, we break our body up into its varying constituent parts, none of the parts, whether a coarse part or a subtle part, can we point to and say, that is the body. That is the very essence by which this body exists. All we could do is say, this is a particular part. But we couldn't say it's the body. And even that particular part, if we looked, as a part, isn't established by way of its own essence, but is empty of existing in that way. It's empty of being independent, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It exists dependently. Dependence on causes, parts, and imputation.
Oh yeah, that is
It's a lot. That's what many of these pages were about.